Everyone says a mosquito stabs you with a single tiny needle. It doesn't, and the real shape hidden inside that bite is now being copied to build a needle you cannot feel. Sit still on a summer evening, and one lands on your arm. You don't notice. It settles, angles its head down, and goes to work on your skin, and for several long seconds you feel absolutely nothing. By the time the itch arrives, the insect is already gone. We treat that as a nuisance, a bite that simply shows up late. Engineers treat it as a problem they have spent 20 years trying to solve. Because a mosquito routinely does the one thing modern medicine cannot. It pushes a tool through living skin without firing the alarm. No flinch, no sting, no warning. Hospitals would pay almost anything for that ability. The strange part is not that the mosquito is sneaky. The strange part is what is actually happening at the point of contact, and how wrong the word needle turns out to be. Watch closely. There is a detail in this bite that almost everyone misses, and once you see it, the ordinary mosquito stops looking ordinary at all. Start with the picture you already have. The mosquito is the world's most efficient flying syringe. It finds you by your breath and your warmth, lands, and drives a needle down into your skin to drink your blood. There are more than 3,000 kinds of mosquito, but only the females bite because they need the protein in blood to make their eggs. The males live on flower nectar and never touch you. So the story goes, she lands, she stabs, she drinks, she leaves a welt. We have built our entire idea of the insect around that one motion, the puncture. It is why the mosquito is the deadliest animal on Earth, carrying malaria and dengue from one bloodstream to the next, killing hundreds of thousands of people every year. And it all seems to hinge on a simple piece of hardware, a sharp, hollow spike, a living hypodermic. That is the version in every cartoon and most textbooks, and for a long time it was good enough. But what happens by the end of this is the part no one expects, because that spike is not a spike, and the way it actually enters you breaks the whole picture. First, we have to look at why the puncture should hurt, and doesn't. Push a sewing needle into your fingertip and your body screams. Your skin is wired with a dense net of pain sensors, thousands of nerve endings packed into every patch, all built to fire the instant something sharp breaks the surface. That is the whole point of pain. It warns you that the barrier is broken. So a mosquito sliding a tube through that same skin should set off the alarm immediately. It does not. The insect can stay parked on your arm and feed for as long as 4 minutes, drawing blood the entire time, and most people never feel the moment it goes in. The obvious explanation, the one scientists assumed for decades, is that the needle is simply too thin and too sharp to register. Slip a fine enough blade between the nerves and nothing fires. Make it sharper, make it narrower, and the skin barely notices. It is a clean idea. It is the reason early painless needle research chased one goal: thinness. Build a metal needle skinny enough, and you copy the mosquito. Except the prototypes still hurt, and the mosquito still didn't. The thinness was real, but it was not the answer. Something else was going on at the tip, something no one had actually watched. A mosquito doesn't have one needle in its mouth. It has 6. What looks like a single spike is a bundle, hidden inside a flexible sheath called the proboscis. When she bites, that sheath bends back and 6 thread-thin tools slide out and go to work. 2 of them are not smooth at all. Their edges are lined with tiny teeth, like microscopic saw blades, and instead of pushing straight in, they vibrate, sawing back and forth at high speed. Sawing takes far less force than pushing, so the skin is barely pressed, barely deformed. Less force means fewer nerve endings get squeezed and fewer alarms fire. Meanwhile, a second pair holds the wound open, and a central tube goes hunting, flexing, probing, steering between the nerves and feeling for a blood vessel. The mosquito is not stabbing. It is threading a path. And here is the thing the cold word needle hides. This is why you can be bitten and feel nothing. Not because the spike is thin, but because there is no spike. There is a vibrating, searching toolkit that slips past your alarm system one nerve at a time. The whole flying syringe picture quietly falls apart. Once researchers put a feeding mosquito under high-speed microscopes, the old story collapsed for good. They watched the inner tube bend like a tiny flexible straw, curving sharply beneath the skin to reach a vessel, something a rigid needle could never do. They measured the force the insect uses and found it pushes with almost nothing, a fraction of what a steel needle needs, because the sawing edges do the cutting instead of brute pressure. And the scale is what stunned the engineers. A standard medical needle is roughly 500 micrometers across. The mosquito's working tip is closer to 60 micrometers, about the width of a human hair, and it still steers, still saws, still draws blood without clogging. In Japan, a team built a needle model directly on it, a jagged, mosquito-inspired silicon microneedle that vibrates as it enters, made at the same hair-fine scale. In trials, volunteers reported they could barely feel it. The mosquito had been holding the blueprint the whole time. Everything the old, thin, sharp spike idea missed, the flexing, the sawing, the vanishing force, turned out to be the entire mechanism. The insect wasn't winning by being sharper. It was winning by not behaving like a needle at all. Engineers have been quietly copying the mosquito for almost 20 years. So why did it take so long? And why does almost no one know? Part of the answer is simple. The whole performance happens underneath your skin, at a scale smaller than a grain of salt, in under a second. You cannot see it. For most of human history, there was no way to watch a mosquito feed from the inside. So the flying syringe metaphor filled the gap, and a good enough metaphor is sticky. It made sense. It fit the welt. Nobody questioned it. The second reason is stranger. The painless needle research lived in narrow engineering journals, while the biology lived in entomology papers, and the two rarely met. The insect everyone wanted dead was also the insect quietly solving a problem hospitals had chased for a century, and we kept swatting it without ever asking how it did the one thing we couldn't. There is still no commercial mosquito needle in your doctor's office. The manufacturing is brutally hard at that scale, but the principle is no longer in doubt. The most hated animal on the planet turned out to be carrying a piece of medical engineering we are only now learning to build, and it has been demonstrating it on our arms the entire time. The next time one lands on you, look before you slap. For a few seconds, an insect the size of a fleck of ash is doing something a billion-dollar medical industry still can't quite replicate, entering a human body so gently the body never objects. We called it a pest and missed the engineering. The mosquito didn't evolve to spare you pain. It evolved to feed without being noticed, and painlessness was simply how it stayed undetected long enough to finish. The kindness was an accident of stealth. But the lesson holds anyway. Sometimes the thing you most want to destroy is quietly holding the answer you have been searching for.